Good morning. Happy Friday.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see y'all.
Good to see you.
Okay, we are back, and we are very excited to have Chris Cortopassi again from Lifeway Hospice. And today's topic is something that I know I still have questions on, and I'm so glad we have two experts. As Joe was a hospice nurse for years as well, and we're talking about all things hospice. So, just to start out, what exactly is hospice?
So hospice is a benefit that is designed for people who have a terminal illness that their physician has determined that they likely have a life expectancy of 6 months or less if their disease process takes the expected course. So it is designed to provide medical, psychosocial, and spiritual support for people who have life-limiting illnesses.
Okay. And what are what I had kind of learned from you just a few minutes ago is, what are the criteria to continue to be on hospice?
So there's different criteria depending on what illness someone has.
Okay.
Generally speaking, you will have, if you fall under the Medicare benefit for hospice, which is given to anyone who has Medicare, has a hospice benefit attached to that Medicare policy. So you would have 2 initial 90-day periods that you would be certified by the physician to be on hospice care. And then after that 6-month period, you would be seen by a physician or nurse practitioner every 60 days to determine if you continue to meet the criteria to stay on hospice. So the criteria is specific to whichever illness you have. The physician's gonna say, do I still expect that this person has a life expectancy of 6 months or less? And if the answer to that is yes, then they're going to certify you for another benefit period. So after your initial 6 months, you get unlimited 60-day periods as long as you continue to meet the criteria determined by the physician if he thinks that you still have the life expectancy that's limited.
Okay.
You know, we just doing private duty home care, we see a lot of patients that are appropriate for hospice, and I know because I was a hospice nurse and I worked with you 15 years ago or so. Chris, you're a great nurse. And so approaching that subject, a lot of people say, oh, no. I don't want hospice. They're just going to give me morphine. So can you explain that myth about hospice, that it's not about just giving them morphine and allowing people to die?
Yeah, so, that misconception has been around for a long time, as long as I've been doing it, I'm sure longer than that. And it's still there. And it's there with not only family members, not only patients, it's there with a lot of healthcare professionals still, unfortunately. And like you said, that myth is that going on hospice means I'm going to die tomorrow, or like you said, they're just going to medicate me, knock me out, and hasten my death, or whatever the case may be. The hospice philosophy is that we do not hasten death, and we don't extend the normal course of the illness. We allow the natural process to happen, and our goal is that someone remains comfortable as that process occurs. So getting someone comfortable means different things to different people. For some people, it does mean I want to be medicated and I don't want to be too aware of what's happening right now. For other people, it means I want to be able to get up and sit in my chair all day and watch TV without feeling so bad that I have to go to bed. It might mean I want to be able to play with my grandkids without having to stop and go rest because I'm in so much pain or I'm in so much distress. So it looks different for different people. And that's what we do initially is we say, what does that mean to you? What does being comfortable mean to you? Does it mean that you want us to be able to get your symptoms controlled so that you can do more things? Or does it mean you want your symptoms controlled so you don't have to do more things? It's all based on what the individual wants.
Well, and I know my grandmother, she was back and forth to the hospital. She had congestive heart failure, but she would only take her Lasix on days she didn't have an activity because she would have to get up and go to the bathroom, and she hated that. So she was back and forth to the hospital because she was not taking her medication right. So she was put on hospice, and actually once her meds were scheduled, she was taken off Lasix and put on something else so she could have adequate time to get to the bathroom. And so actually she did better, so much better that they even thought about taking her off hospice. Her meds were under control. So I think that's one thing. I'm a firm believer in hospice. I think hospice care is so awesome. And kind of share some examples maybe of some patients that you've had that have gone on hospice and actually gotten better, improved. Their symptoms have improved, so their quality of life has been better. And I think that's just the message that I want to get across about hospice care, how good it is, that it's not about dying, it's about living.
Yeah. So, you know, over and over again, we get told by our patients not having to do the back and forth to the hospital, like you said. You know, every time you go to an emergency room, you get probably a different doctor, and probably a doctor who doesn't know you, doesn't know your history, doesn't know what's going on, what's happened in the past. So they're taking the snapshot of what they see while you're there in the emergency room and saying, okay, this is what we're going to do about this right now. And so that back and forth and having multiple providers involved in what's going on obviously is probably not going to provide you with the best care that you can get. Hospice is what's called holistic care. So we're not only talking about nursing care or medication, we're talking about your psychosocial care. If you need assistance with, you know, whatever you have, family issues, if you need assistance with putting together advanced directives or, you know, things for later on. And then we're talking about your spiritual health as well. So we're looking at the whole picture. And when you look at the whole picture, you are able to determine what is most important for the patient. And when you figure that out, you're able to address that with them. And you're not looking at just little pieces of what's going on. We're looking at the whole picture.
And if somebody agrees to do hospice care, say, and I was an admissions nurse for many years, but I always did say, the ball's in your court. You have a choice.
Yes.
If they decide they don't like hospice, they can go off hospice.
Oh, yeah.
And one thing, too, every personality is different, you know, and this is what I've shared. There have been some of our patients have been on hospice care and they just don't click with that nurse or they just don't click with that chaplain or nurse's aide. Can they request a change without hurting people's feelings?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we're here to provide them with what they need. We certainly don't want them to feel uncomfortable with the particular person that's coming in. So, yeah, you can always say, you know what, this is just not the right fit for me. And I think I'd do better with someone else.
Well, and I know, you know, what I try to say about with private duty, we are guests in their home.
Yes.
As is hospice. So I've had situations with patients that they just don't care for their particular nurse, or they feel like the nurse isn't explaining things the way they would And one thing with hospice, I mean, the nurses, social workers, they're teachers too. I mean, you teach about the process of that journey. So let's talk about some other things. Can you explain how Medicare pays for hospice? I got a bill. My mother was on hospice. She passed away on hospice a couple months ago. But I got a bill in the mail from Medicare, and it was from April, and it said 2 skilled nurse visits, 11 aid visits, 1 social work visit. And it was like $2,500. And it said 0 amount I owed, but I could see someone that's elderly, that may not have good vision, doesn't know the healthcare industry. What does that bill mean? What is that for?
So that's a statement of what the hospice charged Medicare.
Okay.
For the visits that they provided. Medicare pays hospice a per diem rate. So we get a certain amount of money every day for a patient, and then we can determine what visits need to be made to that patient. Medicare has some rules about how often you have to do certain visits. You know, nurse visits have to happen at least once every 14 days. But you have some flexibility as far as what you want to do in addition to the bare minimum that Medicare sets. So Medicare requires that the hospice report the number of visits that they made for each patient when we bill them at the end of the month. And then Medicare sends a statement to the patient, to the family, saying, okay, this is what the hospice provided, what they told us they provided, and this is what we paid the hospice for providing those visits.
Okay.
So it's basically like getting something from your insurance that shows, oh, I had a doctor visit. This is what was covered. It's just a basic statement showing what your benefit is.
Yes.
But it's weird. I've just gotten this one from April, and nothing else is just strange. But that does make sense. And then just I think kind of share too, what is the role of the social worker? What is the social worker and what does the chaplain do in hospice? Because I found they were so valuable to my family. We have a spiritual walk. We, are Christians, and I loved that the chaplain came out that sang hymns, So what can that say? You're not of the same faith as, the chaplain is of a different faith, or the patient. How does that work?
So, they can be there just to provide emotional support. Everybody has their own process that they need to go through as they go through the end of their life. In my experience, in my opinion, the majority of that process probably isn't medical. It's emotional, it's spiritual, whatever that looks like for that person. So they're able to, like I said, provide that emotional support. Sometimes a social worker can help with practical things. Like I said, if someone needs to get advanced directives, if they need powers of attorney, help with things like that, the social worker, of course, is able to do that. Sometimes they may need to help with placement if they can't stay in their home anymore, or needing more support in their home, things like that. The social worker is able to do that. And then, like I said, the chaplain can provide spiritual support if they want that, or just emotional support. Everybody, like I said, again, has that process that they need to go through as they get closer to the end of their life. And that's the reason that when Medicare designed the hospice benefit, they said it has to be holistic. It's not just about medication. It's not just about nursing. It's so much more than that. It's about taking care of the entire person and the family. A lot of what we do in hospice, and you'll know this from your experience, is taking care of the family. One of the requirements with Medicare is that we follow the family for 13 months after the patient dies. So for 13 months after the death of your loved one, you're going to continue to get the emotional and spiritual support that you need from the hospice company. We don't just disappear. And that's a really big part of what we do as well, is we're there to support the family as they go through grieving the loss of their loved one.
That's a huge benefit. I don't know if a lot of people are aware of, because I don't really think I even knew that it's that emotional support afterwards. And speaking to what the benefits are, what all is included with as far as supplies go and all of those type of things, as far as what's included in that in that hospice benefit.
So Medicare says that when you go on hospice, the hospice becomes what they call the professional manager of your care. So that means that basically hospice is kind of in charge, for lack of a better way to put it, of whatever else is happening with your care. So they're going to provide anything that's directly or sometimes indirectly related to your terminal illness.
Okay.
They're going to provide equipment that you might need, things like a hospital bed, if you need oxygen, if you need wheelchair, things like that. They can provide those medications that are related to your illness. So if you're on for heart failure, the medications that treat your heart failure, the hospice would provide. And then comfort medications, pain, medicine, anxiety, things like that. And then supplies, again, things that are related to the illness that you have. If you're incontinent because of the terminal illness you have, they'd provide those supplies. So pretty much you're going to get provided by the hospice, like I said, anything that's related to the terminal illness that you have.
That's a wonderful, it's just such a good resource. And I know a lot of, when I've had the privilege of being with some of our clients that have been on hospice, and it was just such a pleasant experience, just from what I have seen of people, and then the coordination of care that the hospice provides is also a comfort to the family as well, because that way they know that somebody is coordinating that care, and that's also one less stress off the family's shoulders of figuring all that out.
Right. And you know, another big thing with a hospice benefit that some people don't realize is Medicare requires that there's 24/7 access to a nurse when you're on hospice. Okay. So you will be able to pick up the phone and call the hospice anytime, day or night, and you're going to get to talk to a nurse. And you're going to get to have a nurse come out there and see you if you need that. You know, that's one of the things that is lacking a lot of times before people get onto hospice, is they don't know what to do at 3 o'clock in the morning. They don't have anything that they can do except call 911.
And you had said the hospice becomes the 911.
Yes. Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because it's true. You're their go-to.
Right.
So, okay, let me ask this too. I know there are 200 plus hospices in Dallas right now. So if I were the consumer, my loved one we agreed it's time for hospice. What does the person do that knows nothing about these names of hospices? How do they know they're getting a reputable? Give some direction on that homework assignment. How are they going to find an agency they trust?
Well, I would certainly start with asking your physician if they have one that they would recommend. I would ask people that you know if they have had experience. If you interview a couple of hospices, I would ask them if they could give you some references from former patients or family members that may be able to tell you. You know, some of the questions I would ask is, what is your response time? If I call you at 3 a.m. and tell you that my mom is having difficulty breathing, how long can I expect it to be before you get here? Because we all know in those scenarios, 5 minutes feels like 5 hours, right? While you're waiting for someone to get there. So if they say, we should be able to get a nurse to you within 30 minutes, that would be reasonable. If it's a couple of hours, that may be something you want to maybe evaluate. One of the things we do at Lifeway, we've chosen to keep our service area kind of on the smaller side and close to where our nurses live, so that when we are on call, we can give you a short response time to be able to get there and help you. One of the things I found from doing this so long is you can do everything right in between them coming on service with you and passing away on service with you. You can do all those things right. What matters is what happens after hours when there's a crisis, and it matters what happens on that last visit that you make to them when they've died. So those are the things that are most important, that are going to stay with you forever. You don't get to do over what you've done for someone who's on hospice care. So it's really important that I think that you find people who've had experience with the company that you might be looking at and say, tell me how that was.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I, just from personal experiences with my mother, the day before she died, I called the nurse at 6 a.m., and a nurse did not get there till after 1 in the afternoon. And I knew what was going on, and I made several calls, and I knew that was ridiculous, that I had to wait that long. It wasn't right. And I think that is such a great, just what is the response time? It's true, because you're right. That's my memory. Everything went wonderful those last couple of days, except I had to wait. And thank goodness I knew the medication. I knew what to do, but I didn't want to be the nurse. I wanted to be the daughter. And, that's my memory, unfortunately.
What do you recommend? If you call and it's been 2 hours,
then keep calling.
Keep calling until the nurse comes up.
Yes, okay. And I know they've got other patients and other things going on, and sometimes it's like Murphy's Law, everything's happening at one time. But you don't want your patient to feel. And I said to the nurse when she finally got there, I said, I don't want my mother to be fifth in line. I want her to get the care she needs, and 6 hours was too long to have to wait. So I was very clear, but I'll just say it like it is. Not everybody does that, right. But what they'll do is just tell their friends, don't ever go with this hospice again.
Right.
So, and then just talking about those final days, and it's kind of what I say, it's kind of like the, childbirth of the soul, or and it's really they're saying goodbye and they're letting go, and their soul is going somewhere else, and they could be very anxious. Tell me about how you handle what goes on with the staff, what should happen in those final days. I know there's continuous care, but just kind of tell us about what a family could expect, or a patient on hospice, in those final days.
So, you would expect to see the hospice staff a lot in those final days. Whether that looks like, you alluded to the benefit that's continuous care with Medicare. And so just to briefly explain it, Medicare provides a level of care with hospice that's called continuous care, and it is for patients who are in a crisis. And usually it's at the end of their life. Not always, but usually. So this would be someone who's in a severe pain crisis, severe anxiety, unable to get those symptoms controlled without a nurse being present 24 hours a day. So not everybody needs that at the end. Many people do, and so your loved one may or may not have that benefit at the end. Regardless of whether they do or not, like I said, you should expect to see your hospice staff a lot in those final days. So if they don't have continuous care, you would expect to see a nurse daily, at least. Probably your psychosocial staff more, and just increased assistance.
Visits.
And Medicare just recently began tracking that with hospices. Is they're requiring us now to report how many visits are done in the last 3 days of someone's life,
Wow.
because they've recognized that that is something that is really important to ensure that it happens appropriately. And again, it's up to you. You sometimes have to say, I want you to come every day, or I don't want you to come every day. A well-experienced nurse is going to ask you. One of the things that I learned very quickly when I'm on call, someone calling me at 3 o'clock in the morning, like, people don't just call you at 3 o'clock in the morning because they want to talk. They probably need you to come. So the first thing out of my mouth always is, do you want me to come? Because sometimes it's hard for people to say that. They don't want to say at 3 a.m.,
Yeah.
well, yeah, I do, but I wasn't going to ask because I don't want you to have to get up out of your bed at 3 a.m. and come over here. But you probably wouldn't be calling me if you didn't need me to come over there. That's another thing you might want to consider as you have an experience with the hospice. When you call them at 3 a.m. because you don't know what to do, what answer do you get from them? Is the answer, your nurse will be there in the morning? And is that acceptable for you? If it's not, you have the ability to change to a different hospice if you want to. So, I feel as though it is our responsibility as a provider to ask people what they need. And sometimes people won't know. They won't know because not everybody's been through this before. And even if you have been through it, it's different each time it happens. And so you have to just be able to just say, this is what we're going to do for you. And if they say, no, I don't want that, okay, no, you don't want it. But you want to have a hospice that is going to anticipate your needs. What I found is the most important really for people is they want to know what's going to happen next.
Sure.
Like, what's going to happen tomorrow? What can I expect to happen next with my mom? Can you tell me what it's going to be like? We don't have crystal balls. We don't know everything. But most disease processes follow some sort of expected progression. And you should have an idea of what to expect as you enter the next stage.
Well, and I found when doctors say your mother has about 6 months, sometimes I'll go in and I'll meet with a patient like, no, it's not 6 months. It's going to be more like 2 to 3 weeks.
Right.
So a lot of times doctors just don't want to give that information, and the hospice is really the ones to make those, have those conversations. But I can tell, I've done hospice so long, I can go in and kind of tell how long a patient has. And I know you do too. And, that's the thing. It's such a great service. And I think it's just a wonderful part of medicine is hospice care. And, I'm so glad you've been here and answered all these questions. Do you have any other questions,
I have
Chrissy?
one more question. Can you just touch on the it's a survey that was done recently about hospice care and what it does for progression, for life expectancy?
So there have been a lot of studies done.
Studies, not survey.
With people who have certain disease processes and looking at, did they receive hospice care or did they continue to receive aggressive care? And looking at what their life expectancy was based on which care they provided. The most recent one I saw was for people who have end-stage heart disease. They did a recent big study on that, and they found that people who were put on palliative or hospice care with end-stage heart disease, I think it turned out to be like a 2-month longer overall life expectancy than people who continue to receive aggressive treatment.
And not be on hospice.
Yes, for the same illness. So, you know, there's probably a lot of reasons that could be, but I think that it helps kind of dispel the myth of if you go on hospice, your life expectancy is going to be shorter than if you don't.
Yeah, so it really speaks to the overall holistic approach that you had talked about, and just getting the person to the place spiritually, physically, to where they can enjoy, or not, even if it's not enjoy, but they can be with their families and figuring everything out, end of life, for a little bit longer, because of how the care plan is executed, and it's holistic and it's everything, and not just one particular area that hospice is addressing. It's the total care.
Yes.
That's wonderful. We could talk about this.
We could talk about it forever.
Chris, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You're just a wonderful guest. You have such a wealth of knowledge. And if people have questions, just hospice questions, what's a number they can call to speak with your office?
Yeah, well, absolutely. We would love that. You can contact us at 972-807-2670.
Perfect.
And you can also go on our website. It's lifewayhospice.com.
And I'll post that afterwards, just so everybody has that resource to be able to contact your office.
Yeah.
And then just so everybody knows too, Acappella, along with Seniors Blue Book, is hosting a hospice symposium focusing on peace at the end of life on November 2nd. So we still have some tickets available. The night before, we actually have Michael Rosado Bennett, who was the director of Alive Inside, which is an amazing movie about how music therapy and how music just awakens the soul. Even if somebody is Alzheimer's and stage dementia and can't speak, the music awakens the person and they can sing. I mean, that happened with Joe's mom.
I know.
It was amazing just to see that. So that's exciting, and that's available at our website at acappellainhomecare.com and on Facebook. So thank you again. We appreciate it.
Thank y'all for having me.
Y'all have a good weekend. See you next week.
Bye-bye.